Hey, what's good everyone? Welcome back to the channel. So I'm doing a different style of video today where I'm not going to be talking about GBL, but I'll be covering the Silph Arena. So if you're not familiar with what Silph Arena is, it is an independent tournament series for Pokemon Go PvP, and compared to the Blind 3 format of GBL, this version is C6 Pick 3. So you have full information about what Pokemon your opponents are using, but not the movesets, and you'll be selecting your own 3 Pokemon to go into battle, and each of the matches are going to be played in a best of 3 format. So this is always something that I've seen and I've been very interested in, but never had the capacity to do. However, very recently Silph Arena rolled out factions. So I did get invited to a factions team, and this was my first time kind of just hitting the ground running and trying to get my feet wet in the format. And then our team, Ohio Nation, actually did pretty well, winning 4 of our 5 rounds in factions and getting pretty close to the very top. So in this video, I'm going to go over some of the team building and then some of the strategies as well, as I try to learn this format from a newbie perspective. And before we dive into the content, I would like to give a big shout out to my teammates here, especially Moonlight for first inviting me to Ohio Nation. I couldn't have gotten as far as I did without the support and advice from you guys as well. And I was very glad to meet everybody during the community day for Gibble. So the role that I took in my faction squad was to be the Open Great League Specialist, and the advice that I got for building my first draft of the team is to take some Pokemon that I have a lot of comfort with and kind of build around those. So of course you can see here that Venusaur and Sableye are going to make the cut. They're Pokemon that I use very frequently in GBL, and of course I've been able to hit Legend with before. And as I started kind of filling it in, you're going to see how this team kind of fills out. Of course, Galarian Stunfisk being a very good complement to the Venusaur and Sableye pair, which actually forms my Legend team from Season 6. And then as I started filling in the remainder of the picks, kind of needed a flyer here, and then also a second safe swap in Vigoroth, and wound up rounding that out with another Mudboy in Swampert. So you can see here, top 3 are our team that I'm very familiar with, and so is the bottom team. The bottom team is my Season 2 team, actually. So overall, having this set of 6 Pokemon here actually gave me a lot of comfort going into the first round of factions. And as it turns out, also, I didn't know that you could also change your team, but that's going to come up a little bit later. So overall, this team has really, really good coverage, as you can see, and some pretty good safety here, because I do feel like with Vigoroth and Sableye, you're going to get a lot of good safe swap options, because the team, or the remaining Pokemon here, are going to be very polarizing. Obviously, having pairs like Venusaur and Galarian Stunfisk, or Skarmory and Swampert are going to rely a lot on alignment, and that's kind of the main purpose for bringing those Pokemon in as well. So you can see here, overall, covering the Great League meta rather well here, and then you know, looking at the potential threats here, of course, there are going to be some Pokemon that are going to give my team issues, especially like Azumarill, because Azumarill does kind of beat a good portion of my team despite having Venusaur, and then of course also seeing things like Medicham, Altaria, and Mandibuzz. So could cause some problems for me in the future, but decided to go with this first draft here just to kind of see how things play out. So let's go ahead and get into the battles. So getting into the first round of factions, I'm going up against WarLordBacon. So first of all, shout out to this trainer. You were incredibly nice to me for my first time in Silph Arena, and you're also bringing a very spicy team to the first bout of factions. So overall, this is a very interesting one, but the most notable pick on WarLordBacon's team is the Sceptile. I feel like Sceptile here, with the exception of going up against Skarmory, can actually outspam and deal a ton of damage to the rest of my team. So this is definitely the Pokemon that I'm most worried about, and I have a feeling that he's going to be bringing it in all 3 games. So what I did is, for the first round here, or for the first match, I did decide to bring kind of a double safe swap, lose the lead team, and my intention here is to try to do as much damage as I can with the Vigoroth in the opener, and then farm down with Sableye to deal as much damage as possible. So of course we do run into the Sceptile here, and I think my nerves got to me a little bit because I have very poor fast move timing here, and I do let a bullet seed through, unfortunately. So I'm going to go for the Body Slam. This is a pretty neutral matchup that Sceptile is probably going to be able to win here because it does get to those leaf blades very quickly. So I'm going to shield the first one up as well, and then because of my poor fast move timing, my opponent is going to hit the second leaf blade here before I get to another Body Slam. So I'm going to let this one go. It does a ton of damage here, and here I try to time my fast moves correctly again, and I'm going to go for another Body Slam. And here at this point, I'm going to try to get to another Body Slam here. Going to shield this up again, so going into a 0 shield situation. Kind of bad for me here, but I'm hoping to reach the Body Slam, but my opponent aggressively swaps into the Gramble, and it is a Charm Gramble. Originally, I thought it might have been a Snarl one, but I'm going to deal some Body Slam damage with it, and I have to bring in the Swampert here to be able to sacrifice it. So The unfortunate part here is that I overfarmed by just a little bit, and we actually end up CMPing. So this is a pretty poor situation for me. I should have just thrown the Hydro Cannon when I had it, but I wanted to take a little bit of energy into the next matchup, and instead I'm in a really tough situation right now. My opponent has all 3 Pokemon still available, and the Sceptile still has energy. So the only thing I can really do here is to farm down with Sableye, and I have to be able to race it to try to beat it to a Leaf Blade. But as you're going to be able to see, though, my opponent does bring in the Sceptile, and of course that one Bullet Seed that snuck through actually is going to determine this match here, because I'm going to wind up taking a Leaf Blade of damage. Although I get the Foul Play off, my opponent's going to have a full Pokemon in the back, and of course at this moment both my Pokemon are so close to feigning, and it is the Alolan Raichu. So overall, had a good idea of what the alignment was supposed to be, just a very poor execution on my end, because I pretty much wasted my whole Swampert right there. So I'm going to get ready for the second battle of this best of 3. Alright, so for the second battle in this best of 3, I had a feeling that he might think that I was going to bring in Skarmory, so I wound up bringing in Sableye, G-Fisk, and Venusaur. So this is obviously a really, really good and positive lead for Sableye, so I'm going to go straight for the Foul Play here, letting my opponent sneak through a Volt Switch, but that is okay. Going to see if my opponent decides to shield here, and he just lets the Raichu go. So at this point, I can pretty much tell that he has something that's going to definitely deal with Sableye, but as it turns out, he's playing double Psychic. So right now, I'm going to let my Venusaur go, and I'm just going to come in with Sableye. Sableye will be the MVP of this match, so I'm going to go for a Frenzy Plant here, which my opponent does shield, and I'm going to try to hit another charge move here right before Venusaur goes down. So this is kind of a good scenario for me right now. And the way I'm going to handle the situation is, if the Hypno is going to be really low, I'm not going to bring in my Sableye here and take the damage. I'm going to bring in my Stunfisk here, because Stunfisk is pretty useless here, and it has a very good matchup against Hypno. So I'm going to aggressively try to Mudshot down this Hypno, and then throw a bunch of Rock Slides, and then escort my Sableye to the remaining Foul Play that it needs to KO the Sceptile. So just going to absorb all this damage. It is Fire Punch, but Fire Punch is a pretty weak move on Hypno, as it's non-stab, and here my opponent does aggressively swap back into the Sceptile, drawing it back out here. So gonna get this Rock Slide off, and at this point, because my opponent takes the Rock Slide on Sceptile, I'm just gonna let this go. No reason to worry about this Glaring Stunfisk anymore. And right now I can just come in with Sableye, can double shield this, Shadow Claw all the way down, and then have double Foul Play for the Hypno, which is dry on energy. So so being able to call that lead right there, anticipating the Alolan Raichu kind of coming in, that was kind of the saving grace for this match, and we're able to claw our way back into a 1-1 tie. So gonna take down the Sceptile here, and then I am gonna throw the Foul Play here, although I probably could have just Shadow Clawed down, but my opponent does let this go because he is way too behind on energy to be able to deal with Sableye, and we're gonna tie things up. Alright, and for the deciding match, I take a little bit of a risky strategy, and I decide to go Skarmory double Mud Boys. So kind of seeing the power of Galarian Stunfisk overall, and I think my opponent is going to adjust the strategy, because Sableye was the MVP, right? So if I bring in the Galarian Stunfisk still, and I use the Swampert to kind of draw out the Sceptile, maybe there's a possibility that Galarian Stunfisk can actually sweep in the back. So here, plan is kind of working as intended, right? Bring in the Swampert here, draw out the Sceptile, and I'm going to go straight for the Sludge Wave, and my opponent is going to overfarm, which is fine. Swampert has done its job here, drawing out the Grass type, and I'm going to bring in my Skarmory right away. No need to wait out the switch timer. I want my opponent locked in as long as possible, and here I'm just going to go and Air Slash down. So Sceptile actually does quite a bit of damage to Skarmory, because my opponent just has so much energy. He's going to be spamming out those Leaf Blades, but in this particular case here, because there's an Alolan Raichu, kind of no reason to preserve this Skarmory, and I need to rely on everything in terms of Galarian Stunfisk. The good thing is that because the Sceptile has been drawn out, and my opponent is probably not going to be bringing the Poliwrath on his team, this is a pretty good scenario for me, because a 2-shielded Galarian Stunfisk is going to have quite a bit of fun against the remainder of the team. So so last Leaf Blade here, I do get an Air Slash through, which KOs it, and I'm just going to go straight for the Brave Bird here against Alolan Raichu. There's no reason to really bait with Sky Attack here, because both moves are going to be resisted. So, and Brave Bird does actually quite a good chunk to Alolan Raichu, and I'm going to start bringing in the Stunfisk to aggressively Mudshot down, and as it turns out, it is going to be the Gramble here. So pretty much locked this matchup. Just going to go straight Rock Slides here, trying to time my fast moves a little bit better, but still let a Charm sneak through right there. But at this point, the game is pretty much over, because I can protect Galarian Stunfisk without having any risk of running into the Sceptile. So Opponent is going to come back in, and at this point, I'm going to shield this move no matter what it is. And we're going to be able to mudshot down this Alolan Raichu, and that's going to be our first, that's going to be a 2-1, and that's going to be our first victory in Factions. So GG's to WarLordBacon. Thank you so much for the entertaining match as well. Alright, so getting into the second round of Factions, I'm going up against FlowerSlayer, and his team is actually quite scary against mine because he has a double water strat. So Pelipper is a very strong Pokemon against my entire team, and I don't really have a solid answer to it. The best answer here probably is going to be Venusaur, but still, Pelipper does have that Hurricane, so it is going to cause me some issues. So the plan here is, I think he's going to have a double water backline, so I am going to bring Skarmory to try to take out the Pelipper, and then have Venusaur in the back for a Azumarill, but my lead definitely has to be able to counter things like the Alolan Ninetales, right? So gonna get into this first battle here. And this match was actually riddled with mistakes as well, but I do correctly call the lead of Alolan Ninetales versus Stunfisk, and I'm going to say in here, you have a pretty decent matchup against it, but either way, neither of my back Pokemon really want to see this Alolan Ninetales, especially Venusaur, so I do have to protect that. And going to take the first Weather Ball here. Ninetales will outpace Galarian Stunfisk, but these Rock Slides are definitely going to hurt the Alolan Ninetales no matter what. So opponent does decide to take the first Rock Slide, which is really good for me, and then he safe swaps into Pelipper. So this is where I make a big crucial mistake here. You know, having planned the entire week of Factions to prepare for this double water strategy, I decide to bring in my Venusaur for some really dumb reason here. So opponent is going to reach the Hurricane here, and I have to call the bait here, I feel. But it is actually the Hurricane, and I go down, and I'm in a very tough spot here. So pretty much at this point, I've already lost the match because despite getting to this Rock Slide, my opponent is counting very well, and I'm going to have to shield this up because I need to be able to answer this Alolan Ninetales, and I can't do that with Skarmory alone. So going to go for the Rock Slide here, and I'm in a disastrous position right now, and I'm kind of expecting the Azumarill to come in right after this. So the Alolan Ninetales does come in to absorb some energy, and it kind of makes sense here because if he does have Azumarill in the back, you know, getting rid of this Galarian Stunfisk is probably going to be the biggest threat for it. So I do decide to go for the Rock Slide, and my opponent has the Azumarill in the back. So at this point, I'm down shields, and there's really no way for me to win this match, especially if the Azumarill has Hydro Pump. So just going to go for as many Sky Attacks as possible, but I think at this point, the level of health on my Pokemon are just not enough to be able to handle this, and of course, he's not going to shield the first Sky Attack here. So going to no-shield this, because if it is a Hydro Pump, then I've already lost, but my opponent actually has Ice Beam, so I have a small chance here to be able to come back in this match. Gonna have to shield this Ice Beam up, or I'm gonna go down, and my goal here is to try to catch an Ice Beam if I can, and that way it can buy me a little bit more time. So gonna go for a fake Brave Bird here to try to get a shield if I can. And then I'm also counting attacks here, so I'm gonna have to sack swap pretty soon, and do decide to catch the Ice Beam right there, and just try to buy myself a little more time. However, due to the health that the Azumarill is at, there's really no way that we're going to be able to reach another one in time. And of course, he's got the Alolan Ninetales back here. Weather Ball is going to do neutral damage, is going to take out the Skarmory. So despite getting the Sky Attack off, all he has to do is shield here, and we're going to CMP tie on the move. So very unfortunate situation here. Had I just brought in the Skarmory against the Pelipper, we would have had essentially a 2-shield Venusaur in the back to handle the Azumarill, and we take the first loss here. Alright, so getting into the second battle of this match, and I make a really horrible misread here. So I kind of anticipate that he's going to be bringing in a counter to Galarian Stunfisk, so I wanted to bring in my Skarmory instead and try to catch the Medicham. And unfortunately for me, he's still playing the double water strat, and I realized that I'm in a very bad spot. However, it's kind of a good thing that we drew out the Azumarill here, because we do have a Swampert in the back, and Swampert does handle Galarian Stunfisk very well. It just depends on what his last Pokemon is. So, and here I make a kind of a misplay here. I could have just gone for the Earthquake here, because I don't think my opponent was going to shield that, and I decided to go for Rock Slides instead, and of course my opponent is going to call it. I am going to take the Ice Beam here from Azumarill, and I'm going to try to hit another Rock Slide. So here I just barely make it, and this is not going to KO, but it's actually not too bad because it does end up drawing a shield from my opponent. But he has a lot of energy as well, so he's going to go hit the Ice Beam here. I should have just let this go because there was no way that I could win switch at this point. So I end up erroneously shielding, but as it turns out, it does draw another shield from my opponent. So actually not too bad for me now that shields are down, but still there's still a big wall to Skarmory over here with the Glare and Stunfisk. So gonna bring in the Skarmory here, and I'm just gonna air slash down, hoping that a one shield Swampert can kind of help out and take the match. So gonna eat these Ice Beams, and my opponent actually had a ton more energy than I originally anticipated, because he does reach another Ice Beam here. But at this point, the Skarmory is pretty useless, so there's really no reason to preserve it, and I'm just gonna be able to Brave Bird this Glare and Stunfisk. So he does bring in the Glare and Stunfisk here, and I'm gonna go for the Brave Bird, and I'm gonna swap out kind of immediately. And bringing in the Swampert now, again, we are met with a double water strat. So pretty brutal overall for me. This was not a great time. I'm going to have to shield up this Weather Ball here just so I can get the Sludge Wave off. And unfortunately for me at this point, because shields are down and the Glare and Stunfisk still has energy, there's really no way for me to win this match unless I overfarm by a bunch. But my opponent does sense this, and he's going to CMP tie on the Hydro Cannon here. And again, Pelipper's attack is so high that it is going to be able to beat Swampert in CMP. We're going to go very, very low here, and despite getting this Hydro Cannon off against the Pelipper, unfortunately for me, the Swampert is way too low to handle this Glare and Stunfisk, and he probably would have got to an EQ anyways. So here, just going to take the Rock Slide. Unfortunate. We're going to go down. We're going to bring in the Skarmory, and the Skarmory is sadly just one mud shot away from getting Rock Slid down as well. So 0-2 right now, so we've already lost the match here, but you know, definitely getting punished for a lot of the misplays that we're making in terms of reading teams as well as gameplay. Alright, so getting into the third battle of the match, of course it's already been decided, I'm already 0-2, but we still play out the last one just because your total wins do go toward your team total to decide which team wins the round. So I'm going to go with the lose the lead strat and farm down, and here we do catch the correct lead this time, so kind of figuring out the pattern just a little bit too late for our opponent. But I'm going to go for the Body Slam here. I do see the Pelipper come in, which means that there is probably an Azumarill in the back. So again, a double water strategy, very, very difficult to play around. And here, I'm going to call this Hurricane here and say it's a Weather Ball, and it is. So this is really good because it allows me to reach the next Body Slam here, and I'm going to go ahead and swap into my Sableye aggressively. So the whole idea here is that the Sableye is going to be drawing back out the Alolan Ninetales, so I just need to deal enough accumulated damage to it, and should be able to have my Venusaur sweep in the back. So here, going to call it again, which is very ballsy, but my opponent is, he's barely going to miss out on the next Weather Ball, and I have a shield advantage, and I have the Venusaur, and my opponent brings out the Alolan Ninetales. So this is a very good situation for me. I'm going to go straight for the return. And it's going to land. So this is pretty fantastic for me. My opponent can't farm down, so he has to throw, and this is okay. So just going to let this go down. And right now, if there is another water in the back, then we're in a very good position. So going to wait out the switch timer here. And I'm going to bring the Vigoroth here to absorb the energy once again. So right now, banking on the fact that there's an Azu in the back. So let's see what happens with my opponent. Going to bring in the Venusaur, and of course the blind swap into a Azumarill, and this match is pretty much over. You know, kind of got the read for the opponent a little bit too late here. And of course Venusaur going to have a very dominating matchup, no problem at all here. Up a shield, and my opponent decides to let this go. So, you know, in the end it didn't matter because my opponent did win the match, but you know, it was nice to get back a win for the team overall. So GG's to FlowerSlayer here, and hope to run into you in the future. Alright, so getting into the third round, we're going up against GetsuFractal, and he has a very interesting lineup once again. So we just finished with double water in the previous round, and now we're going up against double fire. So, and also as you can see, I've changed up my team a little bit from the previous round, and this is a pretty awkward situation for me because I kind of feel like the Azu double fire team is going to give my team a lot of trouble. But for me, I'm going to decide to go with a Medicham lead in the first round here because I could bring in the Venusaur, but if one of the leads is going to be a fire-based one, then it's going to be very hard to navigate around, and I think that the lowest risk lead that I can have to take out a Azumarill is going to be the Medicham. So it's not an XL Medicham, but it still does quite a bit of damage to Azumarill, so let's see how that one goes for us. And I'm going to have Medicham leading into Castform, which is a pretty neutral matchup. Castform does have access to Solar Beam, which is going to be able to one-shot me, but got the feeling here that I can do pretty decent against this Castform in a neutral matchup, and my opponent swaps in the Stunfisk. So at this point, I don't know if it was a mistake or not to bring bring in the Stun Fist, but I do know that Stun Fist beats Talonflame in all even shield scenarios. And also because I get to the rock slides faster than he does, it means that I'm going to be able to dictate shield usage. So I just need to match shields here in this case, no big deal. And here I'm going to try to time my fast move so he doesn't get incinerates through. And despite being kind of low right there, I am actually very close to the third rock slide that I need to be able to KO this Talonflame. So no problem here at all for me. And I'm going to go, and right before I make it to the rock slide, we are going to CMP on the charge move, which is great. I'm just going to shield this up and be able to take out the Talonflame. And then as a result, the biggest threat to Medicham is pretty much removed. So here, I'm just going to go for another rock slide here, and I have an energy lead on Medicham, so even if he has a Azumarill in the back potentially, I don't think it's going to be a huge deal. My opponent is going to bring in Cast Form, but he makes a huge mistake here. He actually decides to throw energy, so I should be energy dry here, and he would have gotten even more farm on the Cast Form. And now, because I've been able to win switch advantage, just going to bring in the Altaria here. Altaria does resist everything that the Cast Form has, and my opponent's last Pokemon is actually a Primeape, so that's a pretty interesting lineup. I think he might have misread the team that I was bringing, but that's okay. So we were able to Sky Attack this down, and then Altaria is also going to be able to take out Cast Form. So here I just go in and snipe the Cast Form with the Medicham using the Psychic here, be able to knock it out. And kind of thinking retroactively, probably should have just stayed in with the Altaria, because this way my Medicham's moveset can be still hidden to my opponent. But either way, able to pick up a win right there in the first battle. Alright, so for the second battle of this match, I'm going to go ahead and pivot to a Sableye lead. So kind of the reasoning for Sableye here, again, another safe answer to a potential Azumarill lead, but my opponent here leads Talonflame, which Sableye actually has a pretty decent matchup against. So going to go ahead and stay in here, bring the Medicham, of course, and the Altaria in the back. So again, two kind of soft answers to Azumarill that are not Venusaur, so not a big issue for me. My opponent does safe swap into a Cast Form, which is pretty fantastic. I'm going to bank a bunch of energy on Sableye, kind of save it for later. And here I'm just going to go pretty much straight for the Dragon Breath down, but I'm going to decide to preserve a little bit of health instead on the Altaria, go for the Sky Attack here. Not expecting my opponent to shield here, and at this point we're going to be able to see what his third Pokemon is potentially, but my opponent actually decides to shield, so this is fine. I'm just going to continue to throw Sky Attacks here, and going to see what my opponent does. And I think my opponent kind of had a sunk cost fallacy here, because he double shields his Cast Form, which is completely okay. Nothing here is going to be able to KO from Cast Form, so just going to let this go once again, and it is going to be the Solar Beam, which is pretty interesting here. So going to farm this Cast Form all the way down, but right before I do, my opponent brings in the Altaria. So didn't switch out right there, because kind of looking ahead to this match, because the Talonflame doesn't have a shield, I can actually potentially snipe it down with Sableye. So just going to bring in my Medicham here, going to use a shield and go straight for the Ice Punch. And because I did a little bit of residual damage with that Dragon Breath, this Ice Punch is actually going to put this Altaria very close to counter down range. So this is very good for me. I'm going to be able to counter it straight down before it gets to another move. And here I've got a ton of energy, shields are down, there's one Talonflame, and I don't have to worry about it at all, because as soon as I see the Talonflame kind of come in, my opponent's still locked in, right? So gonna go straight for the return here on Sableye. This is gonna be dealing massive damage to the Talonflame, and almost gonna be able to knock it out. And my opponent's only play here is to farm the Sableye down to try to beat Medicham, but at this point here, he's way too low, and we're able to go 2-0 in the match so far. Alright, so getting into the third battle of this match, and it's pretty much been decided already, but you have to play it out for the team points, of course. And I'm bringing a pretty interesting team here. I had a feeling that he might lead Altaria, so I actually brought the Ninetales in, which is kind of rough, but as it turns out, Ninetales actually doesn't have a too terrible matchup up against Talonflame. So I am going to stay in here, and I did bring the Venusaur this time for finally, because I figured he was going to bring in the Azu at some point, right? Azu is very good against the rest of my team, but for some reason my opponent decides not to bring Azu once again in the lead. So here going to go for straight Weather Balls here, and my opponent is going to be expending shields, and my opponent actually safe swaps into the Cast Form, and kind of feeling pretty bad about this one, because as it turns out, if my opponent's bringing double fire, both Stunfisk and Venusaur are pretty weak to it. So gonna go for some Rock Slides here to try to pressure my opponent, and let it Ember through right there as well. Not fantastic fast move timing, but gonna go for double Rock Slide here. My opponent does take it, and I'm gonna go for a second one here right before I faint. So if my opponent does decide to shield here, no problem. shields down is actually pretty good for me, and my opponent does expend the shield. So I'm going to bring in my Alolan Ninetales here, and I'm going to throw a Weather Ball just to take out this cast form. So Alolan Ninetales is a fire counter confirmed. And now I'm expecting the Talonflame to come back in, so I am going to shield this up once again. And at this point, I'm thinking, oh, he has to have Azu in the back, right? So Venusaur is in a great spot. So once again, going to try to go for this farm down here, but my opponent does get to another move. I did have a Weather Ball, so I do want to save that. And at this point, I know that I can bring in the Venusaur to get an energy advantage because I'm going to be able to farm down this Talonflame during the Incinerate animation, and as it turns out, my opponent decided to bring the same team as he did in the previous battle, and so Venusaur actually had no play against this team. But the good thing is that Alolan Ninetales does win CMP, so all I need to do is chunk this Altaria as much as I can, and I have the Weather Ball banked to be able to take out the Altaria in the very end. So kind of an interesting decision here. We never saw a Azumarill for the entire duration of this match, but once again, Ninetales kind of an MVP here. So Ninetales being able to take out a fire Pokemon, and then also having that Weather Ball stored to be able to take out Altaria. So definitely a misread for me bringing this lineup into the final battle, but glad that Alolan Ninetales was able to pull it out. Alolan Ninetales is very OP, and it will be part of my lineup moving forward. Alright, and for the fourth round of factions, I'm going up against IwegianBear, and his lineup is very intimidating once again. Has double water, and also has Bastiodon and Mandibuzz. So two very polarizing Pokemon against my team, but also has great matchups against my squad. So this is going to be a pretty uphill battle, but I decide that Medicham is going to be my MVP here. So it has a pretty positive matchup against just about everything except for the Jellicent. So going to do kind of a lose the lead strat once again, and pick up a pretty neutral lead here versus the Alolan Ninetales with my Vigoroth. And I'm just going to go for the body slams here. So kind of sloppy fast move timing for me, giving a Powder Snow on my body slam, but also getting one back on his Weather Ball. So going to take this as low as possible, but my opponent does have two. Ninetales does outpace Vigoroth to the charge moves. So kind of debated here on letting this go and just farming down with Medicham. But again, going to come in here with the body slam, expecting my opponent to match shields here. He is going to be able to outpace, and I think at this point I probably should have just committed the second shield because my backline is actually very switch advantage dependent. So gonna let this Vigoroth go, and I decided to put the energy on my Venusaur here. So if he is going to be bringing waters, then kind of expect him to be somewhere in the back. Energy advantage could be very helpful, but my opponent actually made a very good read on my team and has a Mandibuzz. So Mandibuzz kind of counters everything on my team, to be fair. So gonna go for the Sludge Bomb here, and Mandibuzz is very bulky, so this does minimal damage, and gonna bring in the Medicham to kind of draw and see what his last Pokemon is. Medicham has a pretty decent matchup against Mandibuzz, but this one unfortunately does have a ton of energy banked, so gonna take some Aerial Aces and then try to go for some Ice Punches. But once again, Mandibuzz not expected in this particular lineup. I was expecting a double water team in the back, so definitely getting punished for the misread here. So I'm gonna go for the Ice Punch. And because of the energy advantage that my opponent had, right before I KO this Mandibuzz, he is going to hit another move. So at this point, it's not worth shielding. So going to let this go and going to see what my opponent's last Pokemon is. And it's going to be his own Medicham. So this is a pretty awful situation for me. So I am going to go and try to go double Frenzy Plant, but because of Medicham's bulk, it is going to be able to survive one of the moves. He does shield this up just in case, but you're going to see here that I'm going to hit the second Frenzy Plant here, and Venusaur really needs two shields against Medicham, and despite taking the damage over here, we are going to CMP here. At this point, because my opponent could reach two Ice Punches, I have to call the bait and hope that he is, but my opponent is smarter than that and decides to go for Ice Punch directly, able to counter down. So pretty bad start here for this first match here, as we're 0-1. Alright, so getting into the second battle of the match, trying to claw our way back into this. I actually TM my Alolan Ninetales to Charm, so I kind of figured that it might have some good usage in the back. So here, I'm going to go lead Stunfisk and try to catch a Bastiodon or a Mandibuzz, and I do. And again, the Jellicent safe swap comes in, so I kind of figured that there's going to be another water in the back. So going to protect my Alolan Ninetales here, and going to go for the Earthquake here, do some chip damage to Jellicent, and then swap into my Altaria. In this case, I actually make kind of a mistake here. Probably should have just gone into Altaria right away, but this Jellicent, not sure if it's carrying Shadow Ball or Ice Beam, and he does have the Ice Beam. So this puts me into a very bad situation because I don't know what's in the back, but it might be the water. However, I do need a shield here to kind of preserve switch, as the Stunfisk can do very well up against the Mana Buzz. So gonna be able to Dragon Breath this down with just a sliver of health, and as the Mana Buzz comes back in, gonna fire the Moonblast for the most damage. So this puts us in kind of a tricky situation because depending on his backline, we could be in some trouble. But once again, are going to be able to do a ton of damage to this Mana Buzz, and we're still going to be able to maintain alignment at the very least. So at this point, if he has a Bastodon in the back, we lose. But fortunately, my opponent does have a cast form here, and I'm going to go straight for the Earthquake once again, deal some chip damage, and I'm going to use the Alola Ninetales here, just kind of charm through the rest of the team. So as soon as he takes the Earthquake here, I know that I can pretty much win. I'm going to take, I think I'm going to shield this Weather Ball up here just to preserve some health, and and now the Mana Buzz being so low, I can pretty much just charm it down, even if it has a little bit of energy, no big deal. Gonna take this Aerolace here, and Aerolace actually does quite a bit to Alola Ninetales, given how tanky Mana Buzz is, but we're gonna be able to hang on just enough here. Gonna take another Aerolace here right before we go down, but going to be able to get that last charm in to take the match and kind of tie things up. So kind of a decent read here on my end, kind of identifying how strong Mana Buzz was. So able to claw our way back 1-1. All right, so going into the final battle here, 1-1, trying to get the tiebreaker here to get the win. And I'm going to decide to lead Altaria with 2 Bastodon counters in the back here, except that this is where we get caught here. So unfortunately, this is the worst possible lead for us, and we have to try to maintain switch. So I'm going to go into the Vigoroth here, and of course, my opponent had the same idea as I did. He was going to protect his Bastodon, I was going to protect my Altaria, and this match is going to be a huge blowout. So unfortunately for me, him having the Medicham here is going to get a ton of value, and he actually does have Pup, so I'm going to be able to get another Body Slam off, but it's going to be just a little bit too late. And I'd also make a mistake here, so here I go for a Body Slam. My opponent is not going to shield this, and he's actually going to... I'm actually going to wait out the switch timer, and I should be coming in with Altaria right away to get rid of this Medicham, but instead I wait out the full timer here. And you're going to see how big of a mistake this was. So here I am going to just no-shield this. This is definitely Ice Punch, as I know from the previous round. And this is going to hurt quite a bit. But my opponent makes a great play and save swaps into his own Alola Ninetales here. So, and this is very smart, right? Because he has an answer here to Stunfisk, and he's going to preserve the Medicham here to take down my Stunfisk here in the long game. So I am definitely going to lose this match. This is pretty unfortunate, but at the moment, you know, I had thought about leading a Galarian Stunfisk with 2 protectors as the same as last round, but I thought my opponent would also try to respond with a different lineup, and unfortunately here we get hard punished. And ironically here, had I just brought in my original plan of having Charmeleon Ninetales as well as Stunfisk in the back with the Vigoroth lead, I probably would have been just fine, but instead we are hard punished here, and unfortunately Alola Ninetales does very well against Stunfisk here, even in 2 shields. So despite getting this off, my opponent is going to take this Rock Slide. I'm going to have to try to sacrifice my Altaria here to try to get any chance of winning this battle. But unfortunately, as you can tell, my opponent here is going to get the last Weather Ball off, and my Stunfisk is going to be way too low. At this health range, it can be actually smacked down by Bastodon if it has to, and he even has the Medicham to come in and snipe me down. So at this point, it's pretty much over. So really well played to IwegianBear here. Definitely outplayed me and had a much better read on the team. I'm just going to let the Bastodon take me out because there is no way to win. So GG's, we wound up losing this battle 1-2. All right, and that's going to be the recap for my first experience in Silph Arena, playing on a factions team. I did not play in the 5th round. It was my birthday weekend, so I took some time off, and Need for Speedy stepped in and absolutely crushed it. So overall, I thought this format was really fun, and it's definitely something that I'm going to be looking into for the second bout of factions. I'm actually already doing pretty well in this in the second round here, so I'll definitely have another recap video as we go into the 5th and final week of the second cycle. So, but I highly encourage you to check out Silph Arena. I think it's definitely a very interesting format. The C6 pick 3 adds a whole different layer of team building and strategy and mind gaming. So it's very different than GBL, and it's something that I think that GBL could probably benefit from. Maybe not full term, but it's gonna definitely add some new dimensions to GBL as a whole. So, but yeah. So once again, if you like this content, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.